We got Alex Pavlovic on the line, Giants insider for 95.7 The Game, of course. He is also the Giants insider for NBC Sports Bay Area, and he's joining us on a very busy day, as it is the trade deadline day, as we are just under 7 hours away from the deadline hitting at 3 p.m. today. And Alex, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Before we get to the deadline and what moves the Giants could possibly make, we saw yesterday that there was a trade for AAA infielder Ford Proctor, but there was another move that was made, and that was Kervin Castro DFA'd. We saw him get called up last year, and Kervin Castro, a young reliever, he looked good, he showed flashes. What happened with the whole Kervin Castro situation, Alex?
It was a little weird. I mean, he came into camp this year really in tremendous shape. He had lost a lot of weight and was working hard to, put himself in a position to make the opening day roster, and just didn't have his command. And then, during the season had a dip in velocity. And so you put those two things together and you look at the numbers. I think he was walking like 6 or 7 guys per 9 innings in AAA. And obviously the velocity dip is concerning, and it makes sense for him, but it is still a 23-year-old reliever and somebody who has barely pitched, really. I mean, he's a converted catcher. He was in low A ball when they kind of shot him through the minors. So a little surprising, just because you think somebody like that, somebody who's that young and who had a very good arm and still has a very good arm if he can figure it out, you would think he would have some value going forward, but I think, one thing we're seeing with teams, and we saw it on the other side of this trade, was teams are very aware of what's going to happen with their 40-man roster in the offseason. So they look at somebody like that and think, we don't know if we can make it through the offseason with him on our 40-man, so let's do something now.
Alex, I'm looking at this team, and I went to the game last night, and it's just frustrating, like seeing what I deem to be like the baseball's Golden State Warriors, and we feel like kind of like the Gordon Hayward Utah Jazz. At least the Giants feel like that. What would you do? Not what they're gonna do. What would you do as you approach this deadline if you were running the Giants? How would you operate? I
would sell, and I think you were there last night. You saw the gap between these two teams. And I think we are seeing not just the gap between these two teams get bigger, we're seeing the Padres. And the more concerning thing to me is we're seeing a team like the Diamondbacks who are kind of coming from the other side and saying, we're getting younger, we're getting more athletic, we have the best prospect in baseball who might be here in September. So I look at this Giants team, and they have all of a sudden very quickly gotten old. And, last year they were old too, and they were unathletic last year, but it worked. But it's just not working, and I have real concerns about, how they can put a team around Logan Webb and Camilo Duvall next year, and who are parts of this team next year and the year after. So if you have a chance today to go out and get 2 or 3 guys for Rodon, or add, 5 or 6 guys total, including some guys who are in AA, AAA, or guys who are in the big leagues already, who can be part of not just next year and the year after, but I also think the second half this year. I mean, I don't know that they're going to be in much worse shape if they go out there and sell some guys and just try to be more athletic in the second half and rely on the rotation and, try to close out games a little bit better. So for me, I mean, what we've seen the last month has been concerning, not just for this year, but moving forward.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. And I feel like it was very clear for me when, they brought in Yermin Mercedes. This guy's 8 career home runs, and instantly it feels like he's not an everyday player, because no one's an everyday player on this team, but instantly already one of the guys. They Crawford and Estrada get hurt, and then boom, they swing a deal for a guy who hasn't been in the bigs for 4 years, and he's starting immediately. To me, it was no, it's not about those acquisitions. It's more of an indictment of, you've had 3.5, 4 years to build this thing. You got nothing? You got nothing at the lower levels to bring up to the bigs to just kind of fill some gaps? What are we doing?
Well, I think the problem is everything is at the lower levels, and that's, for me, that's the bigger concern. I still think they have a pretty good farm system, and they have some guys who are going to help. But if you start looking at next year, your best bet to get help is Kyle Harrison, and I think he will help, and I think he's going to be really good. But the other guys, Luciano's still in low A ball. Matos is in low A and has had a rough year. There are guys, Vaughn Brown, Mason Black. There are guys who have popped up this year who are turning into pretty good prospects, but they're all in A ball or below. So I do think there has to be some concern about, what do you do next year? And it's going to take some time for these guys to get here. And even if Luciano turns into a superstar, it's going to be a couple of years before he's an option. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And it is a big problem for them that, their AAA roster, there's not really a lot there to help them. And you look at the big league roster and start looking at young guys who are part of the future. And, it's Logan and Camilo Duvall, I think, has been very good. And,
agreed.
There's some other guys. Luis Gonzalez looks like a piece. I still am a big believer in Joey Bart, but that's like 4 or 5 guys, So I do think that's part of the concern.
95.7 The Game Giants insider Alex Pavlovic joining us here. Alex, so you did say, if you were the one running the team, you think that they should sell. Now, Carlos Rodon is going to be that number one player that is mentioned when it comes to the Giants being sellers. Alex, which teams are they in contact with? What's the latest you're hearing with Carlos Rodon and where he's at with the trade market?
Oh, I wish I had a list of phone calls for you.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It's the usual suspects, I would imagine. I think, there are teams out there still looking for starting pitching. I know Minnesota has been mentioned as one over the last day. I think Toronto, the Cardinals could maybe still use another guy. Everybody could use starting pitching. So there's probably some teams that are out and some teams that have used their big chips already, and the Yankees maybe stand as one of those, the Mariners. But there are all those teams at the deadline who want starting pitching, especially somebody like that who you can slide into game 1 or 2 of the postseason.
I'm seeing the Dodgers last night in their lineup, and they got all these guys that they acquired, that are just absolutely balling. The first 3 dudes in the lineup, Betts, Turner, Freeman, I mean, they're studs, absolute studs. And then I'm looking it sounds like the Padres are going to go get Juan Soto. For years, it was just the Dodgers to worry about. Now you got to worry about the Padres as well. You referenced the Arizona Diamondbacks. Things feel very bleak. Is there any level of optimism that I should have here other than just wait till next year or the year after that? Is there anything to cling to if you're a Giants fan this morning?
Yeah, I mean, they're 4.5 out of a playoff spot, so they're not dead. And I think I really do think, if they keep everybody together today, I mean, it's still a veteran team and guys who believe in what they have in there. And they're not chasing 7 teams. They're chasing the Phillies and the Cardinals, who have their flaws as well. And then if they do trade today, I will stick to this, and I will probably write this after the deadline if they trade. I just don't think the season's over. I think the main issue for them has been their defense, and if they can find a way to fix their defense, they still have a pretty good rotation. Alex Cobb has pitched very, very well. He
Agreed.
The numbers because the defense has let him down. Jacob Junis has been very good. Alex Wood will be much better with a good defense behind him. So you throw him with Logan Webb, that's 4 guys. And if they can keep him healthy in the second half and figure out that 5th spot, and, they might get Matt Boyd at some point in late August or September, that would be my optimism for the rest of the year. I just think, the defense has been such an issue the entire season. And I just go back to even a game like last night. I mean, it is hard to ever say somebody should rob a home run.
No, but I agree with you.
Slater had a shot.
Yes.
And so, and I think you're much better off if you put Slater in left field and you have a center fielder, and you have Yaz in right field, and so I just think there are things they can do defensively to put themselves in a better position, and we've seen it. We saw it against the Cubs a couple times. When this team plays clean defense, they can still be very good.
Yeah, the center field thing is an issue for me. Obviously, this is the organization that had Willie Mays roaming out there for years. I get all that. But just in this division, Petco's a big park. Arizona's a big park. Colorado's a big park. Dodger Stadium can play big. AT&T plays big. Why this reluctance to go find a center fielder? Bellinger made 2 plays in the gap last night using his speed. That was just wow. I mean, he robbed a double or a triple. And Alek Thomas is balling for Arizona in terms of defense. Why have they not prioritized center field defense that much?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one to, center fielders are they're like shortstops. There's a reason that they get paid a lot. There's a reason teams value them quite a bit. There's a reason they're often the top prospects. I think it's just a tough one to go out and get somebody who you feel great about. And they could have gone and probably found somebody who's more of a defense-first option. It worked for them last year to do this, and I actually think Slater in general, does a pretty good job out there, and Yaz does a pretty good job out there. But you do see, the nuance plays like last night, just getting to the wall and things like that, and being more comfortable there. They certainly could use somebody long term, and I think part of it with them is that there's the hope that these guys like Elliot Ramos or Luis Matos, that one of these guys will turn into your center fielder of the future, and it just hasn't happened as quickly as they hoped it would.
95.7 The Game Giants insider Alex Pavlovic joining us here. And I got one more for you, Alex, and I'm sure you're tired of answering questions about this guy, but Juan Soto, of course, his name is the big name that could be dealt here at the deadline. So I'm just going to ask you one more time, because we had John Morosi on MLB Network who said, don't sleep on the Giants to get Juan Soto. Should we just put all that to bed, or should Giants fans hold out hope that they could possibly acquire Juan Soto in the deadline?
I would 99% say put it to bed, except I covered this team 3 years ago, and all of a sudden in February I'm writing about Bryce Harper for a month. And they are very sneaky in their pursuits, and they're not a team that, I know covering them, like they don't leak a lot. They don't let a lot out of their front office. So, and they're always going to be in there on guys until the end because they always try to get creative. So that is like the caveat, I would say. And where I see reports like John's and some other people who have maybe included them, like, yes, the Giants are always going to continue to try, and if they can be creative, if they can get a third team involved, something like that, I'm sure they're discussing that. You're going to have a hard time finding anybody else within the industry, and really a lot of people within the Giants organization as well, who feel like he's going anywhere other than San Diego if he gets traded.
Highlight of the year thus far, is it the Will Clark speech?
It was up there. It was, Will, I think he starts thanking people, and you guys heard it, like, you're like, oh man, Will's going to thank a lot of people. This game's going to start 30 minutes late. And I think it started like 2 minutes late. So it was incredible. I'm really happy for Will. I don't know if you've gotten to meet him, but
he's the best.
He's the best. He absolutely deserves that. And you know what? He's around still. Like, he's around the team and around the guys in the minors. So it was very cool. I'm glad they finally got to do that.
95.7 The Game Giants insider Alex Pavlovic joining us here, and you can, of course, catch his work on NBCSportsBayArea.com. And one of the latest pieces, Alex, that you've written was about Wilmer Flores and his thoughts on the trade deadline, and I'll never have that image out of my head about that time with the Mets when he was teary-eyed knowing that he could get traded, or he was going to get traded, and then ended up sticking with the team. I'll always go back to that one. But, Alex, thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving us the insights.
All right, guys. See you.